So we're going to just, candidly, we're just going to go in the order as folks walked in, and Maury here kept the list. And Delegate Myra Q. North from Montgomery County, 14th Legislative District of Maryland, on House Bill 1303 is going to be first up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And you take the time you need to present, again, House Bill 1303.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I do have Chris from the Maryland Child Care Association available for any questions. Can she come as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Microphone, yeah. Okay. All right, you good?
Okay, tell us your name and you can start.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and the members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I am Delegate Bernice Maricu North from Montgomery County, District 14, offering testimony in favor of House Bill 1303, Child Care Centers Teacher Qualifications Alterations. There was no cross-file, so you're hearing about this bill for the first time. And the reason why I decided to put forth this bill as I learned about the number of challenges the refugees in my district were having, particularly with obtaining employment. And it was something that was reiterated to me just this past January throughout the county about the difficulty in trying to find employment, particularly in the area of childcare. I actually recently learned the refugee populations in Maryland are mostly in the lower Eastern Shore, suburban Washington, as well as the Baltimore metropolitan areas. So you have refugees from Maryland fleeing due to political, economic strife, and oftentimes they might leave their important documents behind. And that includes proof of education. And without access to these documents, the process of trying to seek versus child care teaching is not attainable because the current law is that you would need to have a high school diploma. And so that, coupled with the fact that Maryland's child care facilities are struggling to hire and retain qualified teachers, as well as the recent comptroller's report on child care, reminding us of the need for affordable child care and parents in the workforce. Seeking for a favorable report on House Bill 1303 to address all of these concerns and needs. This bill was amended in the House and passed to allow MSDE to develop a alternate pathway for an individual who lacks proof of educational attainment to work as a child care teacher. We've left up to MSCD to develop that pathway. It could be a form or the like, but this is an alternative to the current law, which is requiring folks who are interested in teaching to actually produce the high school diploma. Now, from MSD's $2 million in short-term grants for early child care providers to the expansion of pre-K access through Blueprint, we are making progress, but there's more to be done, and we're asking it to be done quickly, especially in light of the current federal changes impact education and refugees in my district as well as Maryland. We are seeking particular deadlines, so to speak, for MSDE to actually provide this pathway. So whether it's 60 days or 90 days, we are open to that discussion. But this bill is a way of showing that Maryland is reaffirming its commitment to inclusion, economic mobility, and affordable child care in Maryland. And so for the benefit of children's families and the child care workforce, I'm asking for a favorable report on House Bill 1303. Happy to take any questions. We have Chris from Maryland Child Care Association here to also offer any answers to your questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's take some questions. We're going to start with Senator Augustine.
Thank you so much for bringing this. The only thing I'm saying, Delegate, is that the MSDE, they commented in Ways and Means, but they did not comment here. Can you just help me to know why that would be the case?
Certainly. So the original, and thank you for that question, Senator. So the original bill laid out a number of alternate pathways. We've already laid it out in the original bill.
Okay.
And so MSDE just had some questions about the academic portion. Like there's certain things that are already being done to prove certain elements of the educational component. And that was really where the conversation started. But once we went through the amendment process, we basically said, okay, MSDE, you provide the pathway. We're not going to write it down for you. You go ahead and take care of it. And that is how the bill was passed out of committee and passed out of the House.
Okay, and then so although they did not put in testimony, I'm trying to see, I don't think I see it here, they are now okay with the bill?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1303. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Next, go to Delegate Feldmark. Delegate Feldmark on House Bill 1475. I don't know if you've got, is Ellie Culmer's
I
here?
believe she is on her way.
Okay, Christina Push was right there, and then we have one virtual witness signed up. Is she in the queue? Okay, Delegate Feldmark, why don't you lead off on House Bill 1475?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Jessica Feldmark, pleased to present House Bill 1475, the Mixed Delivery Model Viability Act. So as you all know, the mixed delivery model for pre-kindergarten is an essential component of the Blueprint's Pillar 1, and it depends on our private child care providers participating in the public pre-K expansion grant program. Participation of private providers is critical to our pre-K expansion and is the only way we will have sufficient capacity to provide pre-K to all Maryland students, ensuring that every student comes to kindergarten ready to learn. The purpose of this legislation is to take a closer look at the mixed delivery model and examine the way the pre-K expansion program works for private providers and the ways in which it is not working for our private child care providers. In order for this model to be viable, it needs to be feasible and desirable for private providers to participate. This legislation uses an existing body, the Maryland State Department of Education Office of Child Care Advisory Council, to examine the mixed delivery model in practice, assess what is working and what needs to be improved, identify disparities between our pre-K classes within public schools and what is required of our private providers participating in public pre-K expansion, and make recommendations accordingly. For example, there is currently a disparity in the way rest time is regulated between public schools and private providers. Now, for pre-K students, it's perfectly age appropriate to have rest time in the middle of the school day. And in our public school pre-Ks, students have this rest time as part of their normal day, and it is included as part of the school day. For our private providers, however, rest time is explicitly excluded from instructional hours, so private providers actually have to provide a longer school day to accommodate the regulations. Another example is the way we fund our pre-K programs. Our public schools are forward funded, but private providers must go through a reimbursement process. These are small businesses operating on very narrow margins, and we have repeatedly heard from providers that it is a significant strain on their business to have to advance funds and then wait for reimbursement, which often includes significant delays through MSDE's administrative process. These are just a couple of specific examples. The legislation will allow the OCC Advisory Council to look at the administrative burden felt by our private providers, timing of grant application cycles, language access, and many other issues. We want to empower the council to take its time, talk to providers, get a deep understanding of these issues, and give MSDE time to digest and implement the Advisory Council's recommendations. Additionally, this legislation would require a final report with additional changes that may be needed, including statutory changes which may be needed. Because many of these concerns that the council will be studying and addressing may not necessarily require legislation. Some of them can be accomplished through MSDE regulations and policy. So I do want to take just a moment to address, I know you all have a letter of information from MSDE. First, it's important to note that this legislation was presented to the OCC Advisory Council. While the council did not take a formal position on the bill, feedback was generally positive. Only one advisory council member raised any concerns or suggestions. That was Rachel London from the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. Her suggestions were accepted as a friendly amendment in Ways and Means and are already included in the bill that's before you today. And you have her favorable testimony in the floor system. This bill would, as MSDE points out, require the Advisory Council to take on additional workload. And committee members, including myself, and council members, including myself, are willing and happy to do so. In fact, several advisory council members have submitted written testimony in support of this legislation, and you'll be hearing shortly from Chris Push, who chairs the advisory council. With the ability to form subcommittees and schedule additional meeting times as needed, this analysis of the mixed delivery model will not detract from other issues within the advisory council's purview. And finally, the survey, which MSDE refers to, is a helpful first step. But this legislation recognizes that a more comprehensive, inclusive, and collaborative analysis is needed in order to identify meaningful solutions to encourage private providers to participate in a strong and successful mixed delivery system, offering high-quality pre-K for all Maryland students. So I thank you again for your consideration of this critical legislation. I respectfully request your favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we go to any questions, Vice Chair Kagan had a question.
Thank you. Delegate Feldmark, thank you for your hard work on this important issue. This is a really basic question before we hear from other witnesses. I just think it's important for all of us and for anyone watching at home. Could you please define in really basic terms, what is a mixed delivery,
Sure.
delivery model viability? Yeah, what is
Sure. So the mixed delivery model, as we all know, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Pillar 1 focuses on early childhood education, right? And recognizing that we want to expand access to pre-kindergarten to all Maryland students. So the mixed delivery model recognizes two important factors in that. One is that we do not, in our public school systems, have the physical capacity to take on all of the pre-K classes, right? We just don't have the infrastructure in our public schools. The other is recognizing the reality that our child care industry, that entire sector of our economy, which really is the foundation of our economy because it is the industry that allows all of our other industries to function with working parents, right? That if we were to remove all of the 3- and 4-year-olds who would be these potential pre-K students, if they were to come out of our current child care system into the public schools, our child care system would crumble, right? So the mixed delivery system recognizes that pre-K will be delivered in a combination of public school classrooms and within publicly funded grants for private providers to provide pre-K. So that is the mixed delivery system. Sure.
Okay, Senator Augustine, you want to wait for the witnesses? You want to go right?
I can wait, I guess.
Okay.
Delegate
Let's just take the
Stang, right?
witnesses and we'll go to Senator Augustine, the first question. Ms. Pooch.
Great, thank you.
You're going to be on the 2-minute clock, as is Ms. Calmer's, okay? Up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Feldman. Thanks for the opportunity to testify in favor of House Bill 1475. I'm Chris Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association. I also serve as co-chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council referenced in this bill. This is a critical bill to ensure we understand the direct connection between child care and pre-K as we work to resolve inequities and challenges in the implementation of the Blueprint mixed delivery and identify viable solutions for success. Child care is necessary for the economy. However, it cannot be stressed enough that the business model is not sustainable without 3- and 4-year-olds, and there will be unintended consequences without better analysis and collaboration. This bill engages practitioners and proximity experts through the vehicle of an existing Office of Child Care Advisory Council, which includes MSDE. As co-chair, I'm surprised by the information letter from MSDE, as I was not aware of any reservations, as many council members have sent written testimony in favor, and the council discussed legislation at our February meeting, and no MSDE concerns were voiced. The bill has no fiscal note, and as co-chair, our nonprofit has funds to support administrative work done in partnership with the council and MSDE, if necessary. The AIB, in their December 2023 report, addressing barriers for private providers, states establishing and regularly convening an early childhood work group jointly with MSDE to discuss challenges and identify solutions to overcome the challenges to implement the Blueprint And this report goes on to identify a timeline for implementation of recommendations in the partnership with MSD, MFN, the Disabilities Council, LEAs, ECE stakeholders, legislators. This council outlines all of these members and more willing to, as part of their purview, accomplish the goals for House Bill 1475. We know you cannot achieve mixed delivery without private providers. Parents don't work 6.5 hours per day. We have a critical workforce shortage and a 15% decline in child care programs across the state. We know child care and pre-care are connected as important early childhood education in Maryland, making viability even more challenging. Therefore, we must act through House Bill 1475 to improve the mixed delivery system and support child care for families and to have a choice for women to participate in the labor market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ellie, you want to go up to 2 minutes?
Yes, thank you. And apologies, I literally ran over here. Ellie Colmers on behalf of the Maryland State Child Care Association and SEIU Local 500, once again in front of you to talk about child care issues. Child care and pre-K are intrinsically linked. I think that they have been sometimes shown as two different things. So it's up to 3 years old, and then after that it's pre-K, and it falls within the public school system. That's not really the case. As both the delegate and Ms. Push has referenced, without the 3s and 4s, childcare businesses cannot make ends meet. And so we do need, not only for the providers, but for our families to invest in this mixed delivery system. And before we invest fully in that, we have to address what we've already seen to be very evident barriers for private providers to participate. We simply can't afford to build more school space to accommodate the children as we move towards universal pre-K. There are over enough private providers with over 6,600 providers with capacity for 206,000 children, with over 500 programs accredited and over 1,000 or 35% meeting Excel's requirements, but they're not participating because of these barriers. We've already slowed down the implementation of universal pre-K. Now is the time to take a step back, take a real concerted look, make actual policy recommendations other than just acknowledging it's a problem. We need a route forward and to build a strong foundation before we build up our universal pre-K. So with that, we urge a favorable report and a vote out of committee. Thank you.
Okay, let's pull up the one virtual witness who signed up favorable, and then we'll go to Sir Augustine for the first question. Okay, could you, Charo Torres, could you start your video? If you can hear me, you need to start your video.
Yes, just a moment, please. I'm sorry. I've been waiting for a while. Okay.
Okay, we've got you. So you're testifying on Senate House Bill 1475, and you've got up to 2 minutes. You signed up favorable.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 1475. My name is Charo Torres, and I serve as Executive Director of the Latino Early Care and Education Coalition, a community-led organization that supports hundreds of Spanish-speaking family childcare providers in Maryland. The current pre-kindergarten expansion grant program was not designed with small community-based providers in mind. The providers we serve are women of color, immigrants, and small business owners whose first language is Spanish. They operate on their own, often without administrative staff, and are already managing so much on their own while navigating licensing and quality requirements. We have seen firsthand how the current structure creates serious obstacles. The reimbursement model makes it financially impossible for many providers to participate. Funding decisions often come too late, long after families and providers need to make enrollment choices. And what is especially challenging, there is no technical assistance available in Spanish or any other language other than English. This is a serious equity issue. If we are committed to expanding access to quality pre-kindergarten for all children, we must ensure that providers who reflect the diversity of our communities are equipped to participate. That means offering technical support that is linguistically and culturally responsive. Our Spanish-speaking providers are ready to step into this opportunity. They simply need a system that recognizes their value and offers the tools and support they need in a language they understand to be successful. I respectfully urge you to pass a strong version of this bill that supports the full diversity of Maryland's early learning workforce and ensures that every provider, including those whose first language is not English, has a fair chance to participate in the state's pre-kindergarten expansion. Thank you for your time, your attention, and for your commitment to equity for our children, families, and educators.
Okay, thank you. Senator Augustine, you have the first
Yeah,
question.
I do. Thank you so much. And it's an important issue. Truly it is. I'm trying to understand, Delegate, because it's like the act is separate from the sort of like the advisory council itself. I don't have visibility to what the advisory council sort of is and what its charge is. Because the question that I would ask you all is why do we need, depending on the count, since you're not asking for resources, and since you're not, like, is it within the council's purview to do this without a piece of legislation? I guess is really where I'm asking.
So I think, so actually conveniently, MSDE's letter of information does excerpt some of this. So the council, in its current statute, the duties include the council shall advise and counsel the Early Childhood Development Division of the department, review regulations proposed by state agencies regulating childcare to ensure coordination and consistency, review issues and problems relating to care of children and suggest priorities for consideration by the Early Childhood Development Division, and identify interdepartmental issues of importance to child care providers and users that should be addressed by the Early Childhood Development Division and other state agencies. So I think, I think that is, that this falls in line with that. I think we're being more intentional and focused in what we're asking the advisory council to do specifically. I think it is also a matter of giving the council, I've served on the council for the last few years. We meet quarterly. It is largely MSDE driven in terms of presentations and things like that. There's opportunities for feedback and questions. I think it is theoretically possible, but would be difficult for the council to kind of take this on spontaneously or sort of grassroots from the council membership. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're doing is being specific in what we're asking them to look at, and also being specific in the reporting that we're looking for, right? We're looking for them to spend a year really studying this issue, getting a deep understanding and working on recommendations, make those recommendations to MSDE, give MSDE time to implement changes, and then a final report to kind of look at the changes that MSDE makes and what additional changes may still be needed. That final report then would come to the General Assembly.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just one more, just
Sure.
a little bit of a follow-up. So the letter from MSDE sort of suggests that they're worried about the capacity. So they have the things that they would be asking for. And so by providing this sort of like direction to this volunteer group of folks who are obviously very dedicated to the work, but they are still volunteers. I mean, how do you like sort of respond to that? Because that's like the heart of what they're suggesting.
So I think
Anybody,
and I do want to let the others respond to this also, but from my own perspective, I think, we identified specifically in the legislation that they can establish a subcommittee to take on work outside of the sort of regular quarterly meeting schedule.
Okay.
as I mentioned earlier, and as you see in the written testimony, I think we have a number of council members who are eager to take on the additional work because they see the need for it to be done. And I think it is, I would say from my experience serving on the committee, which has been very helpful to me as a legislator and really good for my own personal education, I believe the council is sort of underutilized in what it could provide. And I think this will tap into that potential and really use it in a very positive way.
And, oh, go ahead.
I was, I think that's a really valid point to bring up. But, the fact that these are volunteers who serve on this board, I believe other, working groups that we establish all too often, unfortunately, because of the given budget outlook, they're also volunteers. These are people who genuinely care and want to devote their time to this because either they are providers who are personally experiencing these issues, they are advocates who are, the voice for those who are affected by it, it's families, it's all of that. They see the value of investing their time with accountability. I think as the delegate was saying, the Office of Child Care Advisory Council, what their purview is fantastic on paper, but they are underutilized, and there is no real follow through that falls within the statute that directs them. And so with this legislation, we're identifying something that not only is an issue for the early childhood education community, but for the state at large. And as we're looking at the blueprint and how we're going to implement it over the next few years, I think that this is a very common sense way to, again, like I was saying, and I hate to use this metaphor over and over, but really build a strong foundation so that when the fiscal outlook changes, we're able to invest money to move towards universal pre-K, that we've hammered out some of these issues. I feel like I'm here probably all too often talking about, and Chris and the delegate, we're trying to do piecemeal fixes for systemic problems, and we're trying to take a step back, do it fully, and come out with recommendations that can actually be implemented.
Okay, thank you.
I got it.
We got a lot of delegates. They got session, and we got a lot of bills. So, and we've got some lights on here. So, let's go Senator Carrozza, then Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Feldmark, thank you. And I think it was helpful to have that explanation of Pillar 1 pre-K education being a priority to refresh us. Just two quick questions. One is, we know our child care providers are key. And so we have this legislation in front of us. We also know we're 3 years into implementation of the blueprint, and we have the school superintendents that have been making some recommendations that looks like some of what you are proposing and they have proposed should be considered not necessarily together, but as we factor in all this. You may be aware that one of the superintendent's recommendations is, just given the current reality of the blueprint challenges and funding, to focus first on Tier 1 4-year-olds that there, and then, as school systems would have the option then, of course, to do more than that, but that gives an immediate focus. Then, of course, you have this bill with this council, I guess, looking at how we would move forward. So my one question is, how are, what you're proposing in sync with what is going on with current implementation is my first question. My second question is, the Maryland Catholic Conference had submitted some testimony. You mentioned the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council's issues being addressed, but I wanted to also ask about the Maryland Catholic Conference.
So I think to your first question, I think actually what Ms. Colmers was just describing, right, that because the pre-K timeline has been shifted back, right, that we do have a little bit of time, and we're focusing first on the priority of Tier 1 students, right, that this analysis, this study happening in the interim, right, before we really start growing pre-K to its full, to the full vision of the blueprint, will help us sort of secure the foundation, right, and make sure that we have corrected these issues, addressed the barriers, so that when we look to expand pre-K further and reach more students, then we've addressed it in a way that private providers will want to engage. Right?
So in collaboration with,
Right.
okay, the school
Right.
systems, okay.
And I think in response to the request from the Catholic Conference, I do believe there are a number of religious schools already, providers who are already participating, and so that would be included within the scope of the study
Okay.
that the council would be taking on.
Thank you.
So, yes.
Okay, Senator Washington, maybe, why don't you have the last question on this? We can move.
Yeah, it's not a question. I also have served on this,
Yes.
this office, with, with Delegate Feldmark, and one of the bills and one of the things we didn't take action on it, why we wanted to add the state board, early childhood to the state board, is that there's really no place where there are experts and individuals who are fully committed, not just generally committed, but are specifically trained, focused, understand all the components of that first pillar. There's no place in our current governance or infrastructure or anything to have them make any type of decisions or help for policy whatsoever. And so I'm just saying it plain. So this is a very small step towards really making this change. And frankly, I believe we're in the situation that we are in because in the original drafting of the blueprint, we really we sort of gave lip service to a mixed delivery, but didn't really consider the implications of that. So you can feel comfortable that this isn't a feel good, it's really necessary in order to address the issues. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's going to conclude the hearing on
Thank
House
you.
Bill 1475. Thank you, Delegate Feldmark. And we're going to next go to Delegate Fair, House Bill 153. You are the only witness, so you can take the time you need to present House Bill 153.
Thank you. And Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and esteemed members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee, for the record, Delegate Chris Fair presenting House Bill 153. This is an uncomplicated bill that seeks to streamline an overly complicated system. It seeks to lower the voting pre-registration age from 16 years to 15 years and 9 months, and to inform the future voter of when they will be allowed to vote in state elections. When young people go to get their learner's permit at 16, they can pre-register to vote at the same time. However, if that future driver gets their learner's permit at 15 years and 9 months, the earliest time they're able to do so, they do not have the opportunity to pre-register, creating a confusing two-tier system where some potential voters slip through the cracks, arbitrarily penalizing those youth who are proactive or who need to get their learner's permit as soon as they are able. In short, the current system, limiting pre-registration only to those 16 and older, leaves a strange gap between when teenagers can apply for their learner's permit and when they can pre-register to vote. A missed opportunity to tie voter registration to another significant milestone in young folks' lives and foster greater excitement about democratic participation. The bill also requires a notification be sent to the eligible voter, reminding them when they can begin voting, as well as where they vote and how to vote. Transparent information about the process leads to greater participation and demonstrates to voters that their government wants to hear from them and that their voice matters. I urge you to support House Bill 153, which continues Maryland's efforts to empower future generations of voters and guarantee early engagement in our democratic system. I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions for Delegate Fair, Vice Chair Kagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Fair. It's good to see you here.
Thanks.
Send to the voter. It doesn't make clear whether that would be email or snail mail or either, if they've got that information?
I
Do you
think
have
that
thoughts?
the intention is to do it through snail mail, is to simply send them, when they receive their voter identification information through the mail, that it would include that information with it. So it'd be inside of an existing mailing that we already send them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions for sponsor? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 153. Delegate Fair, stay right there. House Bill 888, Delegate Fair. And Lauren Lamb, I think I saw Lauren walk in here. Lauren, why don't you come up and sit right next to Delegate Fair, and Delegate Fair, 888.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. Again, Delegate Chris Fair here presenting House Bill 888. I do not have pre-prepared remarks for this because this is a technical bill that simply fixes an oversight during a very lengthy discussion about our initial teacher certification. Last year, this committee, as well as the House and the Senate, passed an initial teacher certification update that was really kind of quite impactful and has kind of better streamlined and explained our teacher certification process. However, during the interim, we learned of one technical challenge that was in place, and that is that there are currently two different processes by which teachers can become certified. They go through what's called an induction program, which is basically like on-the-job training where they work through the school system. And that induction program involves what's called a nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment. And that nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment is really important. It's a multi-month test, exam essentially, and it takes the future educator a lot of time to complete, and it can also cost money in order to take that exam. However, the secondary way that you can go through this process is that you go through a teacher preparation program through a university, and those teacher preparation programs are nationally accredited. And in order to be nationally accredited, ironically, they have to have a portfolio-based assessment inside of their teacher preparation program. And so what's happening is that universities that choose to have their own teacher preparation program now have to have students complete their entire teacher preparation program, which includes a portfolio-based assessment, and then go and recomplete a second portfolio-based assessment that is nationally recognized through this certification program. So this simply says you only have to do one or the other. You don't have to do the same test twice. And it helps to streamline that process. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 888.
Okay, Ms. Lamb, you've got up to 2 minutes to weigh in. You signed up favorable.
Thank you. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, my name is Lauren Lamb, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association, which represents 75,000 public school educators across the state. As this committee knows well, aspiring educators face several requirements for teacher licensure, from college courses to tests to the portfolio-based assessment that the sponsor just explained. And we appreciate your thoughtful work on this issue. I believe this bill is a sensible continuation of that work by giving another high-quality option for students in a teacher preparation program. So especially since one of the two major portfolio-based assessment products has been discontinued, many aspiring educators will need to complete one remaining portfolio-based assessment product. These assessments require candidates to showcase their teaching skills by compiling lesson plans, videos of their lessons, student work artifacts, and detailed reflections on the strategies they used. Institutions of higher education with teacher prep programs are well positioned to do this and are already doing so. So providing credit makes sense for this. We urge the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take questions. Any questions? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 888. And Delegate Fair, the third and final fair bill is House Bill 1138.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
As Christopher Dew's here. Christopher, why don't you come up, and again, we're on House Bill 1138. Delegate Fair.
Thank you. Continuing the theme of technical fixes. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and esteemed members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee, Delegate Chris Fair presenting House Bill 1138. This bill seeks to enable qualifying private career schools to advertise slightly ahead of their official opening date after meeting certain criteria and only with the Maryland Higher Education Commission's explicit approval. To guarantee robust consumer protections for students, schools that receive approval to advertise under this legislation are not allowed to enroll or accept any payments or funds from prospective students. The bill simply allows private career schools to request to begin advertising before receiving their final certificate of approval, but only when they have conducted a market survey, secured a location for the school, completed necessary building modifications, obtained required equipment and permits except that COA, are likely to receive approval from MHEC, and have received explicit authorization from the Secretary to begin advertising. The legislation is necessary to codify the unwritten administrative practices that MHEC currently employs so that private career schools can open, operate, and plan their activities with sufficient clarity. Schools' inability to advertise before opening means that they must fully open before recruiting any students, incurring weeks and potentially months of full operating costs without any associated revenue from full operating levels of students. Those costs amount to an unnecessary financial barrier for Maryland educational institutions offering alternative career pathways like allied health, cosmetology and barbering, real estate, and mechanics, just to name a few. This barrier could be alleviated if schools are able to enroll students closer to their opening dates, which would require them to identify and communicate their existence and services with prospective students beforehand through advertising. Finally, I'm grateful for MHEC's support and collaboration on this legislation, and the House and I accepted its proposed amendment as friendly. With MHEC's guidance, I am confident that this bill strikes the appropriate balance between robust students' protections and regulatory reform to make opening and operating a private career school less burdensome, ultimately giving students more opportunities to pursue alternative career paths. And finally, I would mention we've been working very closely with Mr. Dews and others. We do want to make one final friendly amendment to this bill to update the language from private career schools to institutions of post-secondary education that helps to pick up a broader list of private career readiness institutions around our state to make sure that they all get picked up inside of this bill as well. And with that, Mr. Chair, I ask for a favorable report.
Okay, Mr. Dews.
Thank you.
Christopher Dews from Cornerstone, representing Lincoln Tech. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking the time to hear this piece of legislation. Also want to thank Delegate Fair for his work on this, and I also want to thank the Maryland Higher Education Commission for talking with us about this as well. As the delegate already very, very beautifully laid out, this piece of legislation is really great for organizations like Lincoln Tech and others that are institutions of post-secondary education. Lincoln Tech is a degree-granting institution that trains in, let me make sure I get these numbers right. Here we go. HVAC, automotive technology, electrical work, medical assistance, and welding most recently. They also trained in culinary arts. As they consider expansion, as other organizations are considering expanding into the state of Maryland, the ability to advertise is a very, very powerful tool, and I think that with the language that MHEC has also added, it's very fair and balanced. And so with that, I urge a favorable report with this amendment, and we thank Delegate Fair for being so fair in this piece of legislation. So, thank you.
Okay, Christopher, first of all, I enjoyed my tour of Lincoln Tech during the interim, so thank you for inviting me up there. We'll take questions, but let me just throw one out. I mean, this issue, the timeline here, so the ability to advertise before you've even had been certified, I just want to understand the rationale of the timeline there. That's it seems a little bit unusual. I mean, you haven't got the certification, you're out advertising for prospective students. So could you just focus on that issue?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different layers to receiving certification. Your final is that certificate of approval. And sometimes once the building is built and all of the materials are there and ready to go and the school is ready to open, they then can apply for that certificate of approval. And then it is required that, that they wait until that sign-off happens, which sometimes can be weeks or possibly months where they are waiting for that simple sign off on that document. Everything's in place. It's just the bureaucratic process is moving slowly. The problem that these career schools are bringing to us, or these institutions of post-secondary education, I got to get better at this, that are bringing to us is that they're basically sitting on all the overhead of that property the entire time. They're waiting desperately to have that opening day so that they can then tell students that it even exists. And then when they get to opening day, they don't even have anybody enrolled in the school. So then they have to wait another couple of weeks and or months before they can actually start having students that are enrolled and paying into the system. So this would kind of streamline that process. It allows MHEC to say, okay, you've met all of these other requirements. You're clearly on the road to approval. So we're going to go ahead and let you start advertising. So that way, hopefully on opening day, they're already completely booked and they have a full set of students that can then start paying.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my father graduated from Lincoln Tech like 1950 something.
Indeed.
And so it's in Pennsylvania, which is the main office. And so is Lincoln Tech looking to offer, is it online in Maryland, or do you have buildings here in Maryland? What's the?
So yes, so in Maryland, they have a campus in Columbia, Maryland. And the thing is, while they are considering opportunities, and this is all over the nation, while they're considering opportunities to expand, Maryland is, of course, another viable possibility. And so the idea of being able to advertise prior to, like once they secure a building and all those kind of things, having all that in place, and then their programs and everything in place, the ability to advertise before they can, before they actually get the certificate of approval will be beneficial. But yes.
Thank you. So Delegate Fair, I have a couple questions. So one has to do with, we have this process or where we look at duplicative programming, et cetera. So how does this fit in with, these private career institutions, or it would not apply because they're not offering 4-year degrees, or what's the?
Yeah, that's true. These private career schools, or and the way the amendment is drafted, it's making sure that we identify that what we're talking about are career schools here. I come from the private career school background. I actually worked at a much smaller private career school for a number of years. And so those smaller institutions, like the one I worked at that only has 2 facilities in the state of Maryland, they struggle when it comes to trying to expand or open a new facility because they can't sit on that level of overhead.
And do these private career institutions offer certificates that are offered by other Maryland institutions or institutions that are part of our Maryland system? Yeah,
you can go to a public, like a community college or a CTC, a Career and Tech Center, to receive similar certifications and licensure. These are things like cosmetologists, barbers, mechanics, things like that. They are offered in public institutions as well, but for students that chose to go the private career path after they left their high school, the options are, they're able to weigh their options and pick which situation is best for them.
And the delegate's aware of, while these types of institutions aren't probably under our consent decree or the arrangement around impacting our historically black colleges and universities, there's the broader issues that all of our state schools are having challenges, and is a part of the evaluation, a part of the certification, potential impacts on existing programs that these new private career academies would have on our state colleges and universities, and especially our community colleges?
I don't think so, Senator, and the reason I say that is because this school was already going to open. This school is already on track to be opened. The question is just simply, when are they allowed to tell people that they're open versus do they have to wait till September 1st, or can they start advertising and telling people on June 1st is the difference.
And then the last question has to do with, this body has had a lot of regulation and protecting our students and families around the for-profit private institutions that open up and close. People have given their tuition, and then they're not able to get their degrees. If an institution is advertising it's not open yet and students sign up, are there any protections for if something happens and the building doesn't happen, or, is there anything or any contemplation about?
Yes, and we made that very clear inside of the bill that they cannot collect any money until the school is officially open, until they receive that COA and they have their opening day. They are not allowed to collect 1 penny from the students.
Or engage in an enrollment agreement either. So,
Thank you for that.
yes.
Thank you for that addition. Yes.
Okay,
By the
thank
way,
you. Thank you very much.
The Lincoln Tech building I went to was in Columbia. It was a physical space. It was good. Very nice. Okay, we're going to go to Senator Watson. We're going to get the delegates to their 4:30 session as close as possible. So would you have a last question here?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I think Senator Washington hit on it. So they're allowed to advertise, but they can't accept any students nor take any tuition.
Correct.
Until they get it done, right?
Correct. Yes.
So when you say advertise, does that mean, like right now, you can't put coming soon, a new Lincoln Tech Center located near you? You cannot do that physically right now?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Okay, got it.
Additional questions? Okay.
So
Senator
when you're
Washington.
building, just so you have a building.
Yeah,
And you're saying you can't put a sign on the building saying coming soon?
correct.
Correct.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. I know.
So you just want to put you just want to, you don't want to do TV ads?
Well,
or
no, they can
any of
do all
that?
kinds,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
No, they can do all kinds of other marketing using this, and again,
Mm-hmm.
MHEC approved marketing. They can do more than that, but they literally can't do anything. They can't even put, into your example, they can't even put a sign in the window that says coming soon is a
okay.
school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, additional questions? I don't want to jam anybody. If folks have a question, okay. That concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1138. We're going to next move to, thank you, Delegate Fair, Delegate Howard, and for everybody, I'm just going in the order that folks came in here and checked in with Lemoria, so, well, we got a lot of folks here.
No, sorry.
It's the order. Yeah, I see Delegate Kerr. No, we're not quite yet. We're going to go in the order. Delegate Howard on House Bill 1267. No, yeah. Okay, why don't you proceed, Delegate Howard on House Bill 1267. Delegate Kerr, we got you now. You're in the queue.
Chair
It's all
Feldman,
good.
Vice Chair Kagan, good to see you. For the record, Delegate Seth Howard, pleased to present the committee HB 1267, the Veterans Day authorization for public school holiday. And I'll just very quickly, I don't really do a lot of prepared remarks myself, but I do want to read something from the testimony in favor from the Veterans Caucus that says this bill would give counties the option to declare Veterans Day a public school holiday if they so choose, giving counties the freedom to properly celebrate and honor our veterans by allowing students the day off from school should be allowed. The Veterans Caucus proudly supports greater opportunities to recognize the veterans across Maryland. Here's the rub. So right now you have 2 types of absences, and that's excused and unexcused. Unexcused absences are technically illegal. And right now, until we give counties the ability to designate Veterans Day as a school holiday, should they choose, if a parent takes a child out for on a veteran activity on Veterans Day, let's say, nationally recognized Veterans Day, that is an illegal absence. That's what this legislation is trying to rectify.
Questions for Delegate Howard? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing.
Thank you.
On House Bill 1267. We go to Delegate Wu, House Bill 147. Delegate Wu, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan and honorable EEE committee members. For your record, I'm Delegate Chao from District 9A, representing Howard County, Montgomery County. I'm presenting Bill HB 147. I'm asking for a favorable report. HB 147 is a bill combining 3 bills from House side, from Delegate Adrian Bofo, HB 630, and from Delegate David Fraser Hidalgo, HB 57. From 3 independent bills and more than 20 delegates from both sides, we can see HB 147 is dealing with such an important issue right now. It comes out from the House with 140 to 0 vote. There's a similar cell phone policy bill, SB 130, come from this committee, sponsored from Senator and Benson, Altar, Augustine, Brooks, Feldman, Hester, Weststretcher, and Mary Washington, and Watson. All many sponsors from this committee, so from your committee. There's a difference between SB 130 and HB 147. SB 130 asks for FSDE to provide a template policy, and then LEA to follow and develop their own policies. HB 147 is asking each HEA to develop their own policy directly and then implement it. This cuts MSDE from the loop, which will reduce the years MSDE process may take and provide more flexibility and local control for each school district. HB 147 is aimed at improving the education experience by asking each local school system to have a policy on when and where to use a cell phone, tablet, Chromebooks, wearables, and many other personal electronic devices. By regulating use of these devices, the bill seeks to reduce cyberbullying, foster face-to-face communication, and encourage active participation in the classroom. While technology plays a vital role in our lives, young students need guidance on how to use these devices appropriately in school environment. HB 147 aims to remove these distractions and create a more focused and a productive learning space. So original bill tried to really say, we try to limit middle school and middle school and elementary school not use cell phone at all. But with the amended version, we removed that. We just asked LEA to develop policy for all school levels. And research showed that unrestricted device access in schools often lead to decreased academic performance and increased distractions. According to a 2021 study by Common Sense Media, 64% of teens report feeling pressure to respond to notification during school hours, disrupting their focus and classroom engagement. Studies have also indicated that constant use of personal devices contribute to higher stress level and reduced attention span among students. I'm not going to talk long about this because you're pretty familiar with this bill. And there, right now, more than 13 states have created and developed a cell phone policy in the United States. So I'm looking forward to a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Wu. Question from Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Delegate. There was a letter from PSOM that opposes this. Have you had any conversation with them?
So there are actually a few opposition on this bill. I think one concern is about students with IEP that may need devices. So I think this bill actually asks local LEA to make accommodations for different needs for students. It's not just simply ban the cell phone. So different school systems have different approaches. For example, right now, Howard County school system actually ban all the cell phone from elementary, middle, high school. But Montgomery County actually have a pilot program to see what the best policy for them. So this bill just said, each school system, you need to have a policy and based on your needs.
I see, yeah, because they think that the wholesale ban would be contrary to sometimes their situation where they want to use the phone just for educational purposes.
Yes.
Yes. So, okay. All right. Thanks, Chair.
Any additional questions for Delegate Wu? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 147.
Thank you very much.
We're going to next go to Delegate Spiegel, the proud delegate representing Gaithersburg and Rockville from the 17th District. And we are on House Bill 920. I've got a few witnesses signed up. Tisa Silver Kennedy. We've got one witness virtual. And with that said, Delegate Spiegel, House Bill 920. And your senator is taking your picture, so smile.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Ryan Spiegel for House Bill 920. This is a bill designed to address a special problem in the world of student debt, something called institutional debt. And we're all familiar with the student debt crisis in relation to its other more well-known components, federal student loans provided by the government, and private student loans provided by financing companies. But institutional debt is another type of debt that can also plague students long after they leave a college or university. This is debt that a student owes directly to the college or university, and it can be for any number of reasons, such as administrative fees that were charged to the student or other charges posted to their account. And this debt follows students into their professional lives just like other types of student loans. And not only can institutions pursue students for this debt and impact their credit, but they can also withhold vital information needed for students' jobs and careers, such as copies of academic transcripts, if they owe debt to the institution. And while one study estimates that approximately 125,000 Marylanders may owe as much as $332 million in institutional debt, separate and apart from student loans, the precise landscape of this institutional debt in our state really remains unknown, because only the higher education institutions know what is owed and by whom, and there's currently no obligation for them to disclose that information. So this bill requires Maryland's higher ed institutions to report annually to the Maryland Higher Education Commission, or MHEC, on the overall amount of debt students owe directly to the institution, alongside some other important statistics such as demographics of the students who owe this debt, whether or not they were Pell Grant recipients, and the types of charges for which students usually owe this kind of debt. The bill, importantly, does not alter any institution's operating procedures or debt collection practices. It merely requires them to report to the state the information that they should already have on file. And that'll give Maryland policymakers and also consumers insight into the institutional debt landscape that faces our residents, so we can have a better picture of not only what kind of debt our institutions collect on, but also the people that these practices impact. In 2022, the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia produced a report on institutional debt owed by Virginians, and the results showed notable inequities in who owes this debt, and that institutional debt is not a burden equally shared among the student population. Black and Hispanic students were disproportionately burdened by institutional debt, and the degree of the inequity was pretty striking as well. Without HB 920, we have absolutely no idea the extent of that inequity in Maryland. And beyond the demographic concerns, the sheer volume of overall institutional debt owed to schools in Maryland is also unknown. So shining a light on this information will help us better understand the scope of the problem of this type of student debt, so that we can develop appropriate policies and strategies for addressing it in the future. And so I thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I ask for a favorable report on HB 920.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Spiegel. Let's go to our one in person and one virtual witness, then we'll take questions. So give us your name, and then you're going to be on up to 2-minute clock, okay?
Greetings, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver-Kennedy. I'm the founder and executive director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. And I'll confess that during undergrad, I had a problem with parking meters. I paid fines at the university's public safety building and came to know the clerk on a first-name basis. I recently reconnected with her around this bill, and we went to church together 2 weeks ago, and she supports this bill. I often paid late, and as a result, I paid extra, but I was always able to pay, and that's in large part because my father was gracious and understanding and still is. But many students don't have that kind of support, so their fines accumulate and so do the consequences, and the consequences can be far-reaching. I can recall one student who had her cap and gown withheld unless she paid a balance of less than $500 after 4 years of school, which had already cost almost $80,000 to complete. We're helping another student right now who withdrew from classes at a point when his federal financial aid had to be returned to the government, creating a balance due to the institution. He's now out of school, the bill is in collections, and he wants to return, but he can't afford to pay out of pocket. I share these examples not to say that students should be released from their responsibility or that institutions should stop pursuing them, but to highlight the experiences of two people within a massive $332 million market operating within the state of Maryland. We want to know more about who participates in this market and how they are affected. Now, from my personal experience as a manager within a university financial aid office, I can share two truths. The first is that the students who are affected most greatly by institutional debt most often have the lowest capacity to pay those debts. And number two, the information requested by this bill can provide the answers without causing a significant administrative burden. To that point, I'd like to acknowledge administrators at Allegheny College of Maryland, Bowie State University, Prince George's Community College, Towson University, and Warwick Community College for sharing information about the collective $57 million in institutional debt that they carry. They've shown that it can be done. So thank you for your time and consideration, and I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 920.
Okay, let's get our virtual witness signed favorable up, and then we'll take questions. And we're looking for Winston Berkman Breen. Winston, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear and see me?
Yeah, absolutely. You're here on House Bill 920. You've got up to 2 minutes, and you signed up favorable, okay?
Thank you. My name is Winston Berkman Breen. I'm the legal director for the Student Borrower Protection Center. We're a national policy organization focused on the student debt. Thank you for the chance to testify in support of HB 920. So if you've heard, institutional debts are school-based debts. I go into more detail in my written testimony and just want to make a few additional points today. As you've also heard, very little is actually known about the scope of these debts because schools are the only stakeholders with this information. But it is estimated that there is a roughly $332 million in institutional debt in Maryland owed by 125,000 students, and that the average debts owed at certain school types in Maryland are significantly greater than the national averages. But without more information from Maryland schools, we can't say why that is. At the SBPC, we sent public record requests to 12 Maryland schools about their institutional debts in an effort to learn more. Only 5 responded with data. I've included an analysis of these responses with my written testimony, and it generally supports the premise that there is a serious, opaque, and under-regulated student debt market in the state. Institutional debt also raises serious equity issues. A report on Virginia public colleges showed that low-income students and Black and Brown students disproportionately owe these debts relative to their enrollment populations. Only 1 of the 5 Maryland schools that replied to our request included demographic data, but those data are in line with the Virginia report. As all this bill would do is require schools to report on their institutional debts so the policymakers can make informed, data-driven decisions about whether policy intervention is warranted. It does not change schools' conduct or cancel any of the debts. Schools may claim that they do not collect this information or cannot report on it, but that should actually underscore how necessary this transparency is. The state would never allow banks to manage a $332 million market without basic accounting transparency, and it shouldn't allow schools to either. Further, the fact that some schools, as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, have already reported this information suggests that it is feasible. I therefore ask for a favorable report and would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Delegate Spiegel or the 2 witnesses? We've got Senator Watson.
Thank you for the bill, Delegate. I'm just trying to understand. I'm looking at, I think it's Mikiwa's response in here. So you get the data. What do you do with the data? I mean, if somebody owes, they owe. And according to the last gentleman who just testified, it's not going to change the amount someone owes, according to him, and it's probably not even going to change behavior in terms of how much you charge for a parking ticket or what have you. So what is, I don't understand the purpose.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think the answer is we don't know what we're going to do with the data until we have the data, because that will inform, as policymakers, and will inform for consumers as well, how they make decisions about what else we may or may not want to do once we have the data. When we get data about federal student loans in the government space or in the private financing space, we make decisions at the federal and state level about policies to try and help students who have debt. We have a variety of programs to help those students in those other types of debt. And so we may or may not decide we want to pursue programs for students who have these types of debt. We may decide we don't want to do it if the problem turns out not to be as significant as maybe we feared, or if there are other policy reasons why we wouldn't want to pursue it. But as a data-driven approach, I think it starts with knowing what the problem is, and that's really the only purpose of this bill. Let's get the information, and then later we can decide if we want or don't want to do anything with it. But I think it's important for public disclosure, for understanding the problem, because at least the early estimates suggest it's a significant problem, and we talked about the amounts of money that are roughly estimated without having the data. I think it's important that we have that information.
Is it a problem, or you're assuming it's a problem, and through this bill you'll be able to go digging to see if it's a real problem?
I think that's right. Well, I think the answer is both. I'm not trying to be coy with you, but I think we're assuming it's a problem based on estimates and based on a sample set that we have received from a handful of colleges that have been willing to share their information with us, but there are many other colleges who we don't have that information for.
And if I may add, is that
Yeah,
all right?
absolutely. Go on.
If I may add, as someone who is leading an independent nonprofit organization that works with higher education administrators, we're interested in the information because that can help us craft interventions at the student level, whether that's increased communication, additional counseling regarding debts. We're willing to step in and provide that, but we have to know the scope of the problem before we can design such interventions.
Let's keep those questions tight. We've got to get our delegates out of here soon. Senator Brooks, then
thanks,
Senator
Chair.
Washington will have the last word on this.
Delegates, thanks for the bill. Now, the letter from the University of Maryland, University Systems of Maryland, and then Maryland Independent Colleges and Universities, and the Maryland Association of Colleges. Now, drill down to their third bullet, and it says the institution would need to hire personnel to support the additional hours to compile the data and manage the annual requests. Now, looking at the bill, I saw you were asking for things like the race, address, just seemed like information that I would think that the school would have already. How would you comment on that?
Thank you for that question, Senator, and thanks for all your work on financial wellness as well. I think if you look at the fiscal note on the bill, you will see that DLS points to some universities like UMBC, for example, that say that the cost to do this is fairly nominal for them, not some huge burden that they can't pay for. And for those universities who did respond to DLS saying that there was a much bigger concern about the cost, DLS said that they couldn't independently confirm those concerns. We're not going to pretend that there would be zero cost associated with this effort, but I think what we're seeing, from the data the early data that we've been able to find from working with those colleges and universities that have cooperated in voluntarily providing some information is that they do have the data in some form or another. There will be some nominal cost to figure out how to put it together and report it, but it shouldn't be such a significant cost that they wouldn't be able to do it with the resources that they have, particularly when you weigh that against the size, the potential size of this debt problem based on early estimates.
Yeah, okay, and just the other thing too, if there were substantial costs associated with that, would that not increase the perhaps cost of tuition? But your data will find that out.
I don't know that, but our data will hopefully find that out if we can get it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Senator Washington, you're going to have the last word on this
Yeah.
last question.
So I just wanted to make sure that, so are you with the Student Borrower Protection Center?
Winston Berkman Green is, yes.
That's me, Senator.
You are.
The witness.
The witness.
The
Oh,
witness,
hi.
the
Okay,
witness,
great.
virtual
I
witness.
just wanted
Virtual witnesses, yeah.
Okay, and so you had put in a Public Information Act request to 12 different public institutions, and only 5 of them responded, right? So,
Only 5 of them responded
Right,
with
right.
data.
right. So this bill is to require, essentially, try to require the 7 other schools to do that.
The bill
To
would cover.
respond.
Thank you,
I
Senator.
guess I'm just wondering, since you have a recent Public Information Act request, I'm sort of reluctant, I'd like to know more about that and would want to not jump into with legislation requiring something, not understanding why, well, for what purpose this entity, Student Borrower Protection Center, is asking for this information. So, or maybe you could tell me.
Sure, of course, Senator. So the public information requests, again, only 5 of the 12 schools responded, and those 12 were selected to be representative of the public institutions across the state, 4-year, 2-year, and HBCUs. They were actually put in support of the bill, not the other way around. We're trying to get this information and really understand what the policy issues may be, as the sponsor said. I think the fact that so few schools responded or were able to respond really reflects the need for legislation to create an even playing field and transparency across the different school types.
And then maybe somebody can let us, do institutions carry, do institutions have bond ratings? And my question would be disclosing something like that, could potentially impact? I don't know if there are all the implications of what does it mean for their financing, what does it mean for the state financing of institutions, et cetera. So there's just a lot of questions, and so maybe you can, get back to us on that. So thank you.
That's a good question. We can get back to committee or Senator Washington in particular. Do you want to, just real quick, and then I want to get to some of your colleagues.
Yeah, just to say, happy to follow up on that. We'll get you whatever information we can find, Senator.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 920. Delegate Edelson, why don't you come up here quick? House Bill 71. You're the lone witness, and welcome.
Just me.
And House Bill 71.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. It's great to be with you all. For the record, I'm Delegate Mark Edelson, here presenting HB 71. This is the Holocaust Education Assistance Grant Program establishment. What this bill would do is establish the Assistance Grant Program in the Maryland State Department of Education with the purpose of assisting local school systems with the training of teachers to teach Holocaust curriculum in public schools. Their grant programs could only be used for teacher training classes and materials. The amount of the fund has been heavily amended and now stands at $50,000, which I believe is what allowed for passage through the House. And I'm hopeful that the Senate will look similarly favorably on that number. It's no secret that anti-Semitism continues to rise across our state and our country at an alarming rate. Every day we see reports of anti-Semitic incidents in our schools, at our jobs, and on our streets. As a society, we know that one of the best ways to prevent harmful spewing of hate and ignorance is through education. As Maryland moves towards a more substantive Holocaust education in its classrooms, we must recognize that it is important to give our teachers the tools that they need to both understand and properly teach the material to their students. Without funding for professional development and materials, this will be very hard for us to achieve. By establishing the Holocaust Education Assistance Grant Program, Maryland's local boards of education will be able to hire the proper entities to train their teachers on Holocaust curriculum and provide the necessary training materials. This bill passed out of the House with bipartisan support. It is a priority bill for the Maryland Legislative Jewish Caucus and has been favorably supported by the Baltimore Jewish Council and MSEA, among others. I urge a favorable report on HB 71 and would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, do we have questions for Delegate Edelson, sponsor? Yes, Senator Watson.
And I'm going to try to ask Senator Washington, just in case I'm off track. I thought several years ago we took a hard look at what constitutes, history, and I thought that this body made a conscious effort to say it had to entail not just Black history, not just European history, but also Holocaust and those types of things. Now, unless I'm mistaken, this seems to be redundant because we've tried our best to be fair and equitable to everybody and be inclusive of everybody and what is taught, to our children, to give them a holistic view of this great melting pot, that, the United States is. Can you speak to that, or why is this so unique and different, and why would you not think it's already, taken care of?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's a great question, Senator. Two things I would say. One is, just to be clear, that this bill does not modify the curriculum at all. This bill is intended to be tailored with the fact that we are currently modifying our curriculum through MSDE to include better Holocaust education in our classrooms. Maryland ranks one of the lowest states in the country at the quality of our Holocaust education in our public schools. So we've taken steps to address that. However, what we've heard from teachers is that they have a very hard time teaching the material without adequate training specifically on it. There are programs out there that would help them teach the material, but I'm trying to avoid a scenario in which they have to pay out of pocket for those programs. So the idea here is, as we're improving the quality of our curriculum in our public schools, we have to ensure that our teachers are as best possible equipped to teach the material, and that's what this bill is aiming to do.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 71. Thank you, Delegate Edelson. Let's go Delegate Miller on House Bill 1383. And then we'll go to Delegate Kernick, the only witness on this bill, House Bill 1383.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I am Delegate April Miller, and I am here to ask for your favorable report on House Bill 1383. The Maryland Online Individualized Educational Program, or the MOIEP, offered by Johns Hopkins University, while a valuable resource, necessitates updates to remain relevant and effective in today's rapidly evolving educational landscape. This bill did pass out of the House unanimously, and it codifies that any program used for the state's online special education system must have at least a minimum functional and technical requirements to ensure optimal performance. Our families, our teachers, and our providers should be able to count on a reliable, technologically up-to-date infrastructure platform. Digital tools and platforms available for personalized educational planning have expanded significantly, incorporating new technology driven by the needs of students, special education professionals, and teachers would significantly streamline mandatory documentation, reduce paperwork, increase compliance, and the amount of time that is available to spend with students, and will offer better engagement for families. The program should reflect the latest research and best practices in special education planning to ensure that students have equitable access to the needed classroom support, and the program should address the growing diversity of student populations and effective strategies for supporting English language learners with special needs and their families. You may recall there were a lot of issues with the MDIOP system. Users frequently report technical glitches, browser compatibility issues with system stability, and it is very technically demanding. And while there are mechanisms for providing feedback, such as the MIST, user work groups, there are ongoing concerns about how effectively this feedback is translated into system improvements. And not all LEAs in Maryland use it, and I understand that, but that means there are inconsistencies across the state. And local control is very important, but there can be disparities then in the technology that's used to manage this vital student information. And this gap, I feel, will continue to grow as more and more school systems realize that there are much better systems available, and the cost benefit of using a statewide system, which is free to the LEAs, is not worth the frustration and lack of support that has had an adverse impact on their teachers, providers, and families. Like all systems, MOIEP requires ongoing updates to remain compliant with changing laws, best practices, and advancement. The autosave, for instance, is still a work in progress. And they have been trying to fix it for years. There are scheduled enhancements and revisions that were the result of the MOIEP user work group and the input. And if you look at the MSDE letter of information that was submitted, it's important to be aware that MSDE has been aware of these issues and is working to address them through various initiatives, including the user feedback mechanisms and systems update, and through RFPs that they have initiated. However, my concern is that it would then be Johns Hopkins University's responsibility to update the system to our needs. And they have had every single year over $1 million contracts, and they have had years and years to incorporate and make the needed adjustments, and they have not done so, and we no longer have time to wait. Frederick County, my county, will no longer be using the state program next school year, and I asked to meet with the special education staff to discuss and preview the system that they would be using. And that's why I actually put this legislation in, because I was so excited with what they had told me. So I met with them twice, and they have a system that is designed and ready to go this fall that will integrate IEPs, BIPs, which are behavioral plans, 504s, and will actually track billable hours with service logs for our service providers, which is incredibly important. And so it also then has an additional program that can do Medicaid billing. So FCPS will roll out the ED platform starting in the 2025-26 school year, and it elevates the way all the district's plans and implements and manages students' IEPs, and will increase family engagement. The solution is designed to empower educators, engage families, and support students with the tools they need to succeed. And I just want to share with you a little bit just for what he said, and I'm trying to be very quick, I apologize. The project represents a significant investment in the future of special education within the district. FCPS Director of Special Education said, when I joined, FCPS in 2020, it was clear that our existing IEP system was not meeting the needs of our educators or families. With this new platform, we're addressing these concerns head-on by providing a system that is both efficient and adaptable. FCPS budget numbers for special education, to give you just an example, have gone from $56 million in 2021 for special education up to $97 million. The need for our special education students and families and the supports that are needed are huge. So that's what this bill is about. It's about making sure that all of our school systems have access to a platform that is committed to providing innovative and impactful solutions that helps each school meet the diverse needs of their community. Their job is challenging enough. The system that they use should be effective and an integral resource, not another challenge that they have to overcome every day. So please vote favorable.
Okay, let's keep the questions tight because again, folks have session now. Okay, Senator Carrozza, Senator Washington, then let's go.
I'll be very brief. Delegate Miller, when you see a title with technical requirements, we always want to bring it back to people. My goddaughter used to be a special ed teacher in Worcester County. How does this bill help both special ed teachers and the families? How do we take a bill like this? How will this actually help the teachers who are providing those services and the families?
Making sure that you have the technological updates that support them, including things like simple things like autosave. You can be working on a 50 to 100 page document, and if you lose that, that is a huge issue for our teachers. It saves them time, it streamlines, it has, the FCPS program has actually a parent portal now, and it has a dashboard where they'll be able, and I'm happy to show it to you and talk to you offline because I know we're short on time.
It will benefit both the teachers and the families.
The families have access to the dashboard as well. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Washington, you got the last question.
Thank you so much, Delegate Miller. This is really thoughtful and I think needed and right. I just have a question about the, it looks like you were trying to get a study, but that got struck from the bill. Was that
yes, in order to get it through the House, they had to strike the study. And actually, I mean, MSD has been doing a lot. They've been studying the issue, and if you look at their letter of information and all of the things that they have been. So I think they've been studying it, and they know what needs to be done. I'm very happy they talked to Frederick County. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, seeing no additional questions, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1383. Delegate Kerr, and then Delegate Tolles, I see you in the back. Why don't you come up to the front row here too? Get you next, and you can get over to the chamber. House Bill 298, Delegate Kerr, and then we'll
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair and Senators. I'm Delegate Ken Kerr. I'm here today to present House Bill 298, Demographic Data Collection on Student Parents. So prior to joining all of you in the Maryland General Assembly, I was a community college English professor for 25 years. And not too long into the start of my career, there was a major shift in higher ed. Some of you might remember your syllabi from when you were in college, and down in the course objectives, it would say, in this course, the instructor will. Then it listed all the behaviors that the instructor would do throughout the course of the semester. But there was a profound change where we, rather than focusing on the inputs, we started to look at the outputs. So we changed that to where it said, in this course, the student will. And then it listed all the behaviors and skills and abilities we wanted the students to be able to demonstrate by the end of the semester. And it was a really good philosophical change because the student knew exactly what was expected of them, and we knew how to figure out where they were and how to get them there. So success rates improved, but despite all of that, every semester we would lose a few. And it was really heartbreaking when you'd get maybe into week 12 of a 15-week semester and a student who's doing well and that I fully expected to pass just stops coming to class. They won't respond to emails. They won't take a phone call. They just disappear. More often than not, this was a non-traditional age student. The average age of a community college student is 28. And probably if many of you were like me, by the time you were 28, you had children. So this is this is the reality that they're facing. Now, only about 33% of this population completes a degree or a certificate within 6 years, as opposed to 54% of traditional age students who don't have the added responsibility of dependent children or being responsible for an aging parent. Governor Moore said at the Daily Record breakfast early in the session that 80% of the new jobs in Maryland are going to require a degree or a certificate beyond high school, but only 30% of Marylanders have a degree beyond high school. This is the population we most need to address that with. They've already started a family, they already have responsibility and dependence, and they're completing their degrees at a rate that's slower and sees less completion than traditional age students. So House Bill 298 would require MHEC to collect data on this population for the purpose of determining how we can best target resources to give them the assistance that they need in order to be successful. I have with me on my panel yes. Yes, please do.
Okay, let's pull her up. She's the only witness on the bill. So Ms. Hoffman, you signed up favorable. You'll have up to 2 minutes to testify on House Bill 298. So why don't you proceed?
Thank you for the opportunity to present in favor of House Bill 0298. My name is Dr. Ann Hoffman, and I'm a professor of English and the chair of the English and Humanities Department at Frederick Community College. As is the case at most community colleges, many of my students are adult learners who are raising a family and working full-time. I understand this struggle firsthand. I was a parenting student who graduated with my PhD from the University of Maryland College Park last spring while working full-time and raising 2 children as a single mother. It took me 8 years to earn my degree. I received no targeted support, and I want this to be different for my students. For those unfamiliar with the incredible prevalence and cost of caregiving and attending college, I'll share these powerful statistics. It's estimated that 20% of U.S. college students are parenting while trying to earn a degree, and community college and regional four-year public institutions serve more of these students because they are typically the most affordable and geographically accessible option for people who are tied to the locations of their families. However, Maryland does not require our colleges to identify the number of parenting students enrolled. Therefore, we also are not accurately measuring the needs or their successes. My research as a scholar centers parenting students at community colleges and reveals that they experience financial burdens, scheduling problems, and intense psychosocial stress that increases the rate of dropout and the accrue of personal debt. However, targeted programmatic interventions that identify and support parenting students in unique ways leads to exponential return on investment with completion rates that exceed those of the general college-going population. In short, parenting students are among the most motivated and the most successful when supported because they're working to improve their children's lives, not just their own. This bill is the first step in helping hundreds of Maryland families earn the credentials they need to make a living wage in our state. Without the data that tells us which students and which institutions are serving parenting students, resourcing them is impossible. I'll add that this bill carries no fiscal note, yet the benefits it provides for students and families in Maryland is profound. I urge the legislature to consider this bill essential to the implementation for the blueprint of Maryland's future and as a necessary component for helping public colleges and universities identify and support parenting students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Vice Chair Kagan has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hoffman, first off, congratulations to you. Well done. That's a lot on your plate. You should be very proud of yourself, and we're proud of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Delegate Kerr, always great to see you, and in person, no less. So thank you for this bill. I just have a quick question. I've read the bill, and I'm looking at page 2, lines 1 through 9 or beyond. They're collecting the information. It's not clear that it is anonymous, that there's no personally identifying information, that it doesn't get reported anywhere as, you know, Susie Smith or Joe Jones or something is a parent of this many kids of this age and, you know, is a single parent or not or whatever. And I just wondered if you had thoughts about the privacy or anonymity, or is it not your expectation? Could you just speak to that issue, please?
Can I have Dr. Hoffman answer?
Absolutely, whatever.
Okay,
your
Dr.
preference.
Hoffman, why don't you address Vice Chair Kagan's question?
Absolutely. I appreciate this question very much, and it's something that we spend a lot of time considering and thinking through in terms of protecting the privacy of our students. I will note that Title IX does protect the parenting and pregnant students, so there is an extra layer of protection for students with this bill. And this demographic information would be collected the same way that MHEC collects all other demographic information, would be protected the same way.
And therefore, Dr. Hoffman, you don't believe that anything clarifying that is needed? Because you think it's already covered?
I do not. I believe that the bill covers it. Also, this bill is modeled after other states that have also successfully implemented it. And that has not been, the privacy issue has not been a problem to my knowledge.
So just to beat a dead horse a little bit, so UMBC would say we have 12 undergraduate students and 5 graduate students who are parenting, and this is how old their kids are, and that's it. That's the type of data we would get back.
That is my understanding. That's what MHEC would be responsible for collecting, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Thank you, Delegate.
Okay, we'll go Senator Washington and then Senator Watson will have the last question this time. Senator Washington, you go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hoffman, for referencing Title IX. So that's what I wanted to, so I was looking and thinking about, oh, haven't we already done this? And so does each university have to have anti-discrimination policies under Title IX? Again, what does Title IX require under, regarding pregnant and parenting students? And then I'll have a follow-up question based on what you answer, because I.
Do you want to, Dr. Hoffman?
Yeah, Dr.
take that?
Hoffman.
Yeah, Dr. Hoffman, you heard the question?
I did. Thank you.
Okay, go on.
So the update to Title IX that protects parenting and pregnant parenting students basically says that, you know, that they cannot be discriminated. They cannot be discriminated because of that status and are protected likewise, right? So the update to Title IX actually specifically addressed that because this information has not been explicitly named at colleges and universities, and it's recognized actually that it's a problem. And it is startling that colleges don't already know this, right? And don't already have this information as a means of protecting students based on that. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I want to ask the delegate, is if this is already under Title IX, and I would imagine we would want to make more clear that each academic institution should have a policy, do we need to collect the data? I mean, we already know it's an issue. Should there just be a policy?
Yes, Senator Washington, we do know it's an issue.
Right.
And I think that we can guess at some of the elements that we have to target. But if we have better data, then we have greater justification for picking those interventions or for allocating our resources to specific programs that we've identified through data are what's keeping people from being successful.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, Senator Watson, you'll have the final question.
You. 2 quick questions. So would this be optional? I mean, if I want to go to your college, do I have to divulge that information? Is it going to be required?
Well, Dr. Hoffman may be better to answer it, but I think that the information's already collected.
Okay, Dr. Hoffman, you want to weigh in on this?
Information about my parents and my kids?
No,
so
you are the parent.
Okay,
I am the parent. Okay,
let's let Dr. Hoffman get involved.
So the one thing I just wanted to clarify, first of all, is that Title IX definitely does not cover this. This is something that would be additional, that colleges and universities would be collecting in order to provide targeted supports and to understand the population better. So that's the first thing I just wanted to clarify. Secondly, so students would, depending on how institutions decide to collect this information, the demographic data would be, elected by, students can elect in or out of providing a lot of this information to colleges, depending on where you go. So no, people would not be required to disclose that they are a parent if they aren't comfortable with that information, but the college would need to make the attempt to collect that information from students. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that answers my question. And so this bill, like a lot of the others I see, in the big scheme of things, you're going from a push system to a pull system, right? Colleges and universities already have a slew full of supports for a variety of students, for those who work at night, for those who are parents, for those who are pregnant, and a bunch of other things. They advertise that. What you're suggesting is that that method isn't working, and now you want to go and capture this data and then directly kind of do the intervention or offer the services directly to the students based on the data that you get. Is that a fair statement?
Well, what we want is we want the state to have a way to make sure that we can measure this information consistently across institutions. So there are supports that target different groups of students in a universal way, but there are unique needs that parenting students have that are not currently being targeted, and we know that from the research that we have done. And so it is important that this group of people are able to be targeted and then also identified what supports are necessary for them unique to that population, right? So I do think this is a very different approach, and there's a huge need for identifying the difference in these students versus, say, dual enrolled students or our traditional students, which is who higher education's been built for. It's not built for working parents, and it's not built for parenting students.
Okay, I think that's the extent for this piece of legislation. That concludes bill hearing on House Bill 298. Delegate Tolles, why don't you come up here on House Bill 1127? We can get you going over to the chamber. House Bill 1127, Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and also for listening to me yesterday while I was on the Senate floor briefly.
All good, no worries.
And Vice Chair Kagan. I believe this is a compromise bill. The bill was introduced as a water safety and swimming course. It has now, due to some work in Ways and Means, it is now the water safety instructional content. And this bill would require each county board of education to develop a certain instructional content for water safety for public schools in the county. And it would just require them to develop the program by July 2026. And it will be integrated into the current health and physical education curriculum. And it will be obviously age appropriate for elementary through high school. And one of the great additions to this bill, I've been doing this bill for the past 3 years, it was brought to my attention that children with disabilities, particularly autism, gravitate towards water and often are more likely to drown. And so having that instructional content in the school system or for children with disabilities would be really helpful. And so this just asks for the school system to create this curriculum. And also, I would also ask for a friendly change to allow for it to be offered not just in physical education and health education, but also in outdoor environment, because I know other jurisdictions put their swimming course in the outdoor and environmental learning curriculum. Anne Arundel County does that. Prince George's County has a pilot program for second graders, and Charles County have a program for swimming. And I believe it should allow for all students to be able to participate throughout the state in this very important curriculum. And here's why. The there's been a national study done by the United States National Water Safety Action Plan, starting in 2023, and it goes to 2032. And this plan has determined that 80% of drowning victims are male. Drowning death rates for Black and African Americans are 1.5 times higher than the rates of other folks. The leading cause of death for 1 through 4 year olds is number 1. Number 2, the second cause of unintentional injury and death among children ages 5 through 14. And the disparities are highest among Black children ages 5 through 9. And again, drowning in the rural settings is 1.5 times higher than urban areas. And again, children with autism and on the autism spectrum disorder are 160 times more likely to experience a fatal and non-fatal drowning than neurotypical peers. And so I just also want to add that, you know, if not now, then when are we going to allow a safety program, a water safety program, to be in our schools? Other states have done this around the country, and it's time that we allow for some equitable, for equality to happen. And so I do want to touch on other few things. I know I got to get to the floor. I want to thank this committee for the work you did on reparations. I want to thank you because if I look at this bill and the historical meaning behind particularly Black Americans and chattel slavery and Jim Crow South and discrimination. Discrimination for has happened. Discrimination with Black people around pools happened during the Jim Crow era, and it happened during slavery. And for that reason, you have created, not you literally, but a generation of Black children do not know how to swim. And so this bill would allow for not just Black children, but again, children with disabilities, children in rural areas to have a program in our state schools. And I will just close out in a couple minutes by saying I do recognize, and so listen, let's right that wrong with some of the historical discrimination that has happened around water. I do recognize there is some opposition, and I want to quickly be able to address that. I call this a compromise bill because we do recognize that it is a new curriculum, and we know our school systems do not like to add new curriculum. And I want to thank the Baltimore City Public Schools who had a great conversation with them, who letter states that, listen, we can't afford to do the whole swimming piece, recognizing everyone does not have pools, access to pools. You know, Senator Washington, Baltimore City had a wonderful swimming program, I've told by my colleagues, you know, some time ago, and you may have access to pools, Prince George's. And so we recognize there is an issue there. And so what we did is made it a curriculum. And one of the, you know, concerns they had was how robust will it be? Well, I leave that up to the school system to decide how they want to do that. It will be robust as robust as they make it. And I hope that they can, this is a good starting point where we can say we're teaching our children some level of curriculum in our schools. We teach them, you know, the safety of human trafficking. We teach them, you know, various other curriculums. So why not let our children leave school with a skill set? So with that, again, I would say if not now, then when. It is time that we do something to close this gap and allow our children to have this skill upon graduation. And I want to thank briefly, Mr. Chair, my intern who's been with me 3 years. She's graduating from University of Maryland. She's part of the intern program here at the state, and she's done a wonderful job in helping me with this research since she's been here. She's a senior. She's graduating next month. So Autumn Ballard, I want to thank her for her assistance. Thank you.
Okay, let's get and we're going to keep the questions tight because Delegate Tolles needs to get to the floor. Senator Watson, yes, and then Brooks, and then Senator Washington.
So I read the title of the bill, but your explanation kind of threw me off. So water safety encompasses the procedures, precautions, and policies designed to ensure well-being of individuals in and about bodies of water. But what I thought I heard you talk about was swimming lessons. And I mean, just reconcile that for me, because the title of the bill says water safety, but you're talking about learning how to swim, swimming lessons, the fact that, and we all know that there was some discrimination about brown pools, you know, in years past and those types of things, particularly for Black folks. But what is this bill, what are you trying to teach these kids?
Sure. So thank you for that question, Senator. Initially, when I started this process, it was water safety curriculum. So you do 1 week of the curriculum, and then you go out to the actual pools. So if you were in Baltimore City, you may go to the community pool or the Y, or in Prince George's County. You know, we have a wonderful Parks and Recreation program, and the children would go to that pool. But through the work of the committee and recognizing there are some financial and physical challenges, we decided, or the committee decided, to just keep it to water safety. So you would learn, you know, various aspects of what it means to be safe around water, you know, how to swim, sort of that textbook curriculum, and then you do not go out to the lessons and with the actual water swimming lesson. So it would just be textbook curriculum. Think about it if you were taking a driver course. You know, you have to do that sort of past that first level, that book level, and then you will actually go out and take the driver course in order to get your license. So you need 2 parts. It's similar to that, where you would just do the part where you don't go out, where you need buses, got to figure out what pool you go to. You still learn water safety, but it's in the classroom. Yes.
First, you learn not to walk in front of a speeding car, and then you learn how to drive your own car.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, Senator Brooks.
Thanks, dear.
How you doing?
Pretty good, Delegate. You know, first thing comes to mind is the financial challenge.
Yeah.
And, you know, I looked at the letter from PSOM, and all 24 school districts, they were opposed to the bill. You know, establishing and maintaining access to swimming facilities may impose significant costs to the schools. You know, and that was the one concern. Another one would be a logistical challenge. Those schools who don't have access to pools. Then we've got a liability concern. You know, that's going to greatly increase the potential liability to the schools. And lastly, just implementing that program, would it not divert from some resources from some of the existing plans that are needed, especially when we got budgetary challenges?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. Well, Mr. Chair, if I could try to answer three of those questions.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, number one, that is the first 2 questions or statements that you made. We no longer have that challenge because they will not be going to, you know, they won't have to get on a bus, have to figure out their transportation, have to figure out who to partner in the pools. In Prince George's County and in Charles County, Charles County does it automatically. Prince George's, we have a partnership with Parks and Recreation. So those first two things are out the door. Secondly, let me ask you a question. Have we ever known PSAM to support anything new, any new curriculum? Did they support financial literacy in the schools? But how critically important it is to teach our children how to be financially smart, how to be smart with their money. And so, you know, we're not saying you have to do it the way that we're asking you to do it. We're giving every jurisdiction the freedom to determine how they want to do it. And so putting it in an already existing health curriculum, or an already existing outdoor and environment curriculum, or an already existing physical education curriculum. You know, if you want that to be 2 pages, or if you want it to be 24 pages, it's up to that jurisdiction. I have faith that they can do it if they want to do it, if they want to keep our children safe. We have to change with the times. So thank you.
I'll answer your question.
And you know where to find me. We can talk more.
Literacy, yes,
Financial literacy.
It's embedded. So
absolutely, and I think that's what they're trying to do here, embedded into an already health program, or embedded already into a physical education program. And I think you do save a lot of resources at this time by not having to get the transportation to find, you know, to go to a pool or some other, you know, place place to learn the actual physical swimming. So that's to come later. I'll see you later on that bill.
Okay, yeah, well, you guys
thank
can
you.
take this more, okay, Senator Washington, you're gonna have the last question.
I'm sorry, Mr.
That's
Chair.
okay. If you don't want to get back to the floor, we could
I
stay
do,
here
don't tell
another
my
hour.
speaker,
It's
that's my
okay.
first time over here, so.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Actually, I was going to build on Senator Watson's question, but the way I took it, and I just want to make sure I appreciate you making the sort of historical and cultural barriers. I felt that when we were talking about the relationship between what rural people experience, African Americans and persons with disabilities related to water and water safety. And I have, personal sort of stories where my mom lived like a mile from the beach in North Carolina, and it wasn't until I learned when my dad took us to the beach, we visit them, went to the beach, and my mom had never been in the beach. And then there was always when there was to put new pools in our communities, there'd be these just kind of these little like paddle pools or these little ponds, et cetera, and we were fighting with the Y, and the Y said, well, we did research to say that there's not a need, and I just said to myself, what was the research? Black people don't swim. I mean, there's that thing, and so found out that they had only made this type of pool in 2 places. One was, they were proposing, we got to change, by the way, proposing in Baltimore, and another was a rural white poor area in another state. And those were the only 2 that they had decided. So making that connection, I think, is really important. And I get that I want to be clear that this is just a part, you're talking about it as safety, and this is another safety like crossing the street, and that it would be added to existing curricula.
That's correct.
Is that the right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Tolles. That concludes hearing on House Bill 1127. Let's get
Thank you. And I urge
Delegate
a favorable
Roberson up
report.
here on House Bill 772.
Thank you again.
And I know you've got some folks who are here to testify. Is Colleen Duha here? Colleen? Brandon Butler? Kirkland Murray? Artie Kamali? Okay, let's start there, and then after that we've got some farewells with amendments. So, Delegate Roberson, why don't you lead off on House Bill 772, and then we'll go to the witnesses.
Yes, sir. I did not know I had so many witnesses, so I guess it's a good thing I am last. Thank you, Senator Feldman, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan in her absence, and members of the EEE Committee. Good to be with you all for the first time. I know it's a new face, so I'm excited to be in front of you all on today. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Delegate Kemp Roberson here to speak on HB 772, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. This legislation is critical to the continued success of one of the most forward-thinking and transformative elements of the blueprint for Maryland's future, individualized career counseling for middle and high school students. As you know, this program was designed to help students identify career interests and map out educational pathways, and whether that means college, career training, apprenticeships, or other post-secondary opportunities. So this committee has already demonstrated its support for this initiative by voting for Senator Rosenpap's amendment to the governor's blueprint bill, which basically this mirrors it. It's already in there that you passed from Senator Rosenpap, but I trust that you all would do the same for this one. This is a standalone bill, just so you're aware. It was not a cross-file bill, but Senator Rosenpap was able to amend there, so I want you all to be aware of that. Without passage of this bill, the career counseling program is at serious risk. The original intent of the General Assembly was to provide our students with meaningful, individualized guidance that opens doors for their futures. House Bill 772 affirms and protects that commitment by ensuring the collaboration between schools, community colleges, and workforce boards continue. In addition to securing the program's future, it also strengthens accountability. The bill requires AIB to submit a report to the Governor and General Assembly in January 2027, evaluating the program's effectiveness that was amended in the House version that you have before you. I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 772, and I'm here for any further questions that will turn to my panel as well.
Okay. How about this? If you want to go to the floor, we could take some questions of you now, and if not, you're free to, if you want to head to the floor, if that works.
Chair,
okay, any questions for the sponsor? Okay, seeing none, why don't you go do your thing and do some voting across
Thank you,
the
Mr.
street.
Chair.
Okay,
Actually, we have the experts here.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's go through each of you is going to be on the up to 2-minute clock. And so let's start down here. We'll just go down the table. And again, you're up to the 2-minute clock and you're going to weigh in. All of you are signed up favorable. Okay,
Yes.
so why don't you start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brandon Butler in favor of House Bill 772 on behalf of the Maryland Workforce Association. As the delegate had mentioned, this is the third time now that you have heard about career counseling. First, you rejected efforts to repeal the program. Secondly, you had unanimously strengthened the partnerships in the program by passing the second Senator Rosa Pepp amendment to the blueprint bill. During that voting session, Senator Carrozza made mention of an op-ed written by Senator McCray on the importance of the blueprint career counseling and the partnerships that have been established in this. And now you have this measure before you. As everybody knows, the blueprint bill that was passed out of this committee is going on to or has now gone over to the House. There's going to be a conference committee. This, as the delegate mentioned, it is vitally important that this bill, the standalone bill, be passed as well, so that so that the provisions of career counseling embedded into the blueprint bill doesn't fall through the cracks. And so we're asking for a favorable report on this bill to allow workforce boards and their partners to truly pursue students who are college and career ready. I want to also make mention that you have in your packet not only the testimony of a number of career coaches, but also the county executive Stuart Pittman has voted or has put a letter of support in this bill as well as some experts from Montgomery County whose World of Work program had just concluded with 2,500 eighth graders, 135 businesses who have opened the World of Work for those students, and for that, we ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. Give us your name.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and honorable members of this committee. I'm Kirkland Murray, President of the Maryland Workforce Association. So again, I ask that you move this favorably on this bill. You've heard the success of this bill. You've heard from career coaches, from parents, from students about how this program is changing their lives. Before this bill, school systems were only focusing on helping students that were going to college. This helps students to be both college and career ready and really changing students' lives. You've heard this firsthand from previous witnesses on this bill. As Mr. Butler just mentioned, in Anne Arundel County, County Exec Stuart Pittman has submitted a letter in favor of this program. He's been very involved in this program. He's come out and seen this program work firsthand. So as many business leaders in Anne Arundel County, and this is a way to ensure that we are building our future workforce. Before workforce boards, we were working with those disconnected youth. This gives us the opportunity starting in middle school to really prepare students so that we don't have those disconnected youth. This bill will also allow us to increase our labor force participation in for this age group. This will also help to address some of the issues that you're facing in this General Assembly right now. By having more students prepared to go to work and prepared to go to work, this will change and help Maryland's economy continue to grow. So again, I ask that you pass this bill favorably. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next witness.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan and committee members for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Colleen Jua, and I am a career advising coach at Quince Orchard High School in Montgomery County. Prior to this position, I was a school counselor at Damascus High School, also in Montgomery County, for 31 years. During that time, I was recognized as a 2017 Montgomery County Public Schools High School Counselor of the Year. I'm here speaking in favor of HB 772. And as a counselor, a majority of my time was spent getting kids to graduate, getting students to graduate, things like scheduling and monitoring grades and checking transcripts and writing letters of recommendation, and the list goes on, and managing crises. I really had no time to work with students on career exploration and their career paths. Career coaches fill a very important gap that counselors can't fill due to the workload that I just referenced. Career coaches are able to really deep dive and work with students to discern their next steps after high school. By helping them helping them identify their RISEC themes and their strengths, interests, and values, students are better prepared to make their best decisions about their future. Students can clearly articulate who they are and what type of career they want to do. In my time at Quince Orchard High School, I have seen the impact of my work. My students consistently tell me that after working with me, they can see all the possibilities of what they can do after high school. It helps guide their choices, whether they're going to college, to the military, taking a gap year, going to work, or doing an apprenticeship or an internship. One of my seniors said in her survey, Ms. Jua helped me understand myself so that I can make the best decision for my future. And for that, I'm thankful. Career coaches play an integral part in the development of our students. I ask that we be allowed to continue doing our impactful work to help shape the next generation. In closing, I strongly urge a favorable report.
Thank you. Are you talking about Quince Orchard located in Senate District 15? Is that the same Quince
Yes, it
Orchard
is.
High School?
And,
Yeah.
and includes students from District 17.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go to our last witness on this panel, and give us your name and you're got the
Good
2-minute
evening.
clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Artie Kamali on behalf of Employer Prince George's. I'm just here to say me too and ready for any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for this panel? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We've got two witnesses. I'm going to call Mary Pat Fannin and Shannon Pugh. Signed up favorable with amendments.
Shannon had to leave. Yeah. Shannon had to leave, as well as our other virtual witness.
Okay, it's all on you,
All
Mary
right.
Pat Fannin,
Time to start.
FWA.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Pat Fannin, Executive Director of the Public School Superintendents Association. Thank you in advance for considering a few common sense adjustments to the administration of this program, which you'll find in our testimony. One thing that's been really lost in the discussions about this program in the last few weeks has been about accountability to students. The blueprint holds the LEAs accountable for ensuring that students are CCR by 10th grade or graduation, not the workforce investment boards. Yet, we have little to no role in this important career counseling piece of Pillar 3. This disconnect undermines our ability to meet expectations of the blueprint. Counseling must be fully integrated into our broader CCR efforts. Moving to fiscal accountability. The blueprint now requires LEAs to track blueprint funds on a monthly basis by school, by blueprint category, showing that the money follows the student. None of that is required for the workforce investment boards. And this is a $55 million program that we have to just turn over to them. Therefore, we're asking you to consider incorporating the following. Delay the ratification of our fiscal 26 MOUs until a comprehensive review and needs assessment is done. Mandate, yes, you heard me correct, mandate that we can train all the coaches so that everyone is articulate about what each district's offerings are for CCR opportunities and for academics. Mandate some fiscal accountability for the workforce investment boards, at least annual budgets and quarterly reports. And lastly, do an earlier evaluation on the program than what was passed last week in Senate Bill 429. And let's get back to a service model that is student-centered. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mary Pat Fannin on this one? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on this piece of legislation, which is House Bill 772, which brings us to our final bill for today. I see Secretary, we're on House Bill 762. Secretary Rye, are you here to testify? I've got Derek Coley signed up as well, but you here on it?
He signed me up.
Okay, so that's all yours. You are the witness on House Bill 762. And again, you are my constituent, and you are the Secretary of MHEC and that good stuff. So take the time you need. House Bill 762.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. Thank you for opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 762. For the record, I'm Dr. Sanjay Rai, Secretary for the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and certainly a proud resident of Senator's District as well for many, many years. So this bill is a departmental bill for the Maryland Higher Education Commission, which would revise Maryland's 2013 completion goals. More than a decade ago, Maryland took a bold step in setting up a statewide post-secondary attainment goal, recognizing that a highly educated workforce is essential to economic competitiveness. The College and Career Readiness and Completion Act of 2013 established the ambitious target that 55% of the Marylanders would have at least an associate degree by 2025. Our colleges and universities have risen to the challenge. Today, Maryland boasts 727,000 degree holders, with institutions consistently exceeding their individual attainment goals. This progress is testament to the strength of our system of post-secondary education and its role in fueling Maryland's economy. However, we are projected to fall just short of 55% goal. This is not because of institutional performance, but due to factors beyond higher education's control, including migration patterns, employment trends, and workforce retention. Moreover, even if we hit 55%, it will not fully address Maryland's workforce needs, particularly in critical fields such as teaching, nursing, healthcare, cybersecurity, and other high-demand areas. For the past 10 months, we have worked closely with Maryland colleges and universities, providing data on their progress towards the 2025 goal and identifying areas for improvement and engaging stakeholders across the education and workforce sectors. A major milestone in this process was the inaugural Student Success Summit, where we engaged institutions in discussions about the future of higher education in Maryland. Campus reflection reports submitted in February affirm that institutions are ready to move forward with an expanded attainment strategy. Maryland was a national leader in 2013, setting an ambitious goal to drive post-secondary attainment. Today, we have the opportunity to lead again. We must expand our vision to include the full range of post-secondary credentials that fuels our state's economy. In closing, I'm asking for a favorable report on House Bill 762. Investing in these priorities will ensure that Maryland remains at the forefront of higher education, workforce development, and research-driven economy. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. We're going to go to Senator Croza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the bill. This is moving more from the degree goals and more towards expanding all of the post-secondary degrees and certificates that are out there. So we're kind of going broader beyond just academic and including all of these other credentials, that we are making progress on those as well.
Yes. So first, our goal from 2013 was from 2013 to 2025. It's time to set new goals. As we set new goals, we want to keep the existing associate degrees and higher, but we want to broaden this with other certificates and other credentials that are also important and helpful for our economy.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? Seeing none? Okay, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 762. That completes our bill hearings for today. Thank you, Secretary Rai.
Thank you.
Okay, folks,